All right, you guys, welcome back to History 125. Today we're going to be talking about the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages is also called medieval times or the Low Middle Ages. One of my favorite times in history is the High Middle Ages, which we will be getting to next week. So this is the Dark Ages, which is around 476 to about the year 1000. Anyone remember what happened in 476? Rome falls. So, let me show you guys what happened after Rome fell. All of this was Rome, no more. Now the Roman Empire is over here, remember? We have Constantinople. Diocletian decides to split the Roman Empire, but Constantine decides to build the new capital over here in the Eastern Roman Empire, in modern-day Turkey. So all of this land that was controlled by Italy ends up kind of shattering. Think about a plate that's dropped, a ceramic plate that drops into just a bunch of pieces. Today we're going to be talking about the Kingdom of the Franks and also the Lombard region. So I want to talk about the Lombard region first, because it has to do with Christianity. So Christianity is split into the Roman Empire is split into the East and West, and we have the Byzantines, which is this area, Turkey. This is the Byzantine area, which we will be catching up with a little later in the course. So we have the Byzantines here, and then the only area left is the Lombards in Italy. This is the only kind of ruling family left. Rome isn't important anymore to the Eastern Roman Empire. They're all about Constantinople. And so Italy is kind of left shattered. It had been destroyed by Vandals. The economy went right in the toilet. There was the assassins of so many emperors and stuff, the assassination of so many emperors and stuff. So this is Italy, and all that's left of it is the Lombards, and then the little bits and pieces of the Byzantines, which again is where Constantinople is. So Christianity continued and became what we called that martyrdom, that there were Christians, but being a Christian was not a really good thing to be, could get you killed, until again Constantine comes around and gives the Edict of Milan saying that Christianity will be tolerated. Christianity starts to gain a little bit of momentum then. You don't need to be so afraid. It's not a great place to be a Christian, but you don't have to worry about being lit up by Nero like his Roman candles. We start to see Catholicism, being a Catholic. And being a Catholic is the part of Christianity where you have a pope. So in the Kingdom of Lombard, we have the pope, which is the Bishop of Rome. And a pope is the highest living important person in Christianity. And the pope changes. There's a different pope now than there even was a couple years ago, probably 10 years ago. And so we start to see this social hierarchy in Christianity, specifically Catholicism, to be a Catholic, a Christian. And just to make this really clear, being a Catholic means to be a Christian. Being a Christian doesn't necessarily mean you're a Catholic. The way I think about it is, if Christianity is the United States and Catholicism is New York, you can be an American but not be from New York. But all New Yorkers are part of America. Hopefully that makes some sense. So we have our social hierarchy. We have the Pope. He is the top. He is the Bishop of Rome, followed by cardinals, archbishops, bishops, priests, and deacons. And the Pope is still in the outskirts of Rome today, in St. Peter's Basilica, which was built by Constantine. And St. Peter was actually the first Pope. We won't get into all that. We're going to come back to this, but I want to switch over to the Frankish kingdom really quick. So here we have the Lombard region, and this is right when Rome falls. And there's this whole area that ends up becoming known as France. But as you can see, there was a bunch of different types of families, like family rule. So you have Aquitaine, Burgundy, Austria, Saxony. This is like the broken up, shattered plate of the Roman Empire. This is the Frankish kingdom. So today we're going to talk about the people in charge of the Frankish kingdom. We begin with this person named Clovis. And Clovis was part of the Merovingian dynasty. And he was really ruthless. He used to be sad and complain that he couldn't find his family. He'd be like, oh, I don't have any one of my family members to celebrate with, and my family is all broken up. And so he went searching for them and then would just kill them. Clovis really wanted power. He was a very power-hungry person. And he marries a woman to gain some power, and they have a son. And she is a Christian, and she really wants the son to be baptized. Clovis is like, what are you talking about, this stupid Christianity? I don't want any part of this. That's just dumb. And eventually he caves. The wife keeps begging and begging. And so they baptize the son, and on the day of his baptism, he dies. So Clovis is like, I told you it was stupid. Clovis is not convinced that Christianity is important, but they have another son. And again, the wife complains and complains, and eventually they baptize the other son. But he does not die. So I guess that's pretty good. Well, Rome ends up, like I said, shattering like a plate, and Rome loses the area of Gaul, which is like France. If you remember, Caesar was stationed in Gaul. And in 491, they end up losing all of France. So France has been broken up. Let me go back to the map. I'm sorry. The Frankish kingdom has been broken up into all of these warring areas. And Clovis wants to cash in. Clovis really wants to cash in on all this. And like I said, he was a reckless guy. He would go in and just take over villages. He'd kill people. And there's this really interesting story about him plundering a church. In 491, being a Christian was tolerated, but it was starting to gain more power. His own son was baptized a Christian, even though he didn't believe it. So to go in and plunder a church, that was a little interesting, even for him. So there's a story about Clovis and this silver bowl. So they plunder the church, and the bishop asks for a silver bowl back. And Clovis, he was a leader, but he decides to go and ask his troops so that, they had a little bit more of a diplomatic rule. So Clovis doesn't want to make a decision without talking to his main guys. And the guy's like, no, we're not going to give the bowl back. And he chops it in half, the guy, and is like, here, you can have this half and do whatever you want with it, but we're not giving the bowl back. And Clovis doesn't do anything right away. And later on that day, he tells the guy that chopped it, he's like, hey, your shield is all battered and gross. You should fix it. And when the guy bends over to look at his shield, Clovis chops his head in half. Just like the guy did with the silver bowl. And again, this is just the idea that Clovis is not Christian. He doesn't really care about the bishop, but he doesn't want to be disrespected either. And in 495, Clovis is trying to get more land, trying to conquer more, and he's losing really, really bad. And he prays and he says, God, my wife's God, this Christian God, whatever, if you help me win the battle, then I guess I'll convert to Christianity, whatever. If I win, that is. And Clovis does win. And he gets baptized, and he is the first kind of king in Europe of a bunch of land, like a real king, to be baptized. Clovis didn't have a lot of political things to gain from this, but he made this deal with God on the battlefield, very similar to Constantine. And even though other kings didn't suddenly have more respect for him, the people had a lot of respect for him. So Clovis begins to be seen as a good guy. And a lot of followers join in, and his generals and stuff, they all join in and become baptized. And so we see the beginning of a Christian leadership in the West. If you guys remember, Constantinople is moved to the east to the Byzantine Empire by Constantine because he wants to be a Christian on the down low. This is like, Constantine would be like, oh my God, what are you doing, Clovis? So another thing Clovis does, which will shape Western history forever, is he declares war on the heretics. A heretic is anyone that goes against the Christian God. So a heretic could be a woman that you think is a witch. It could be someone who doesn't follow the Christian Bible. It could be someone that is Christian but does something bad one time. And so Clovis kind of puts out this bounty on anyone who is a heretic is now an enemy of Clovis, the Christian king. Well, moving right along here, we have our next really important king of the Franks, Charlemagne. So Charlemagne is part of the Carolingian Empire. Again, it's just an important family. We don't need to know too much. Like I said, everything that we talk about in this course, you could take a whole class on when you are at a higher level of history. So I took, for example, a 300 level history class just on the 300, 400 years of the High Middle Ages. So don't stress too much about not knowing all these families, because we're going to go a little fast. So Charlemagne is part of this Carolingian family, and they completely revitalize the West, or what was the Roman Empire. If you even just look at this really beautiful bust of Clovis, what does it say about the people that made this? It shows him cast in gold and with jewels. Why did I say Clovis again? Oh my gosh, Charlemagne! So Charlemagne's family, the Carolingians, began as servants to Clovis, and Charlemagne's dad was named Pepin the Short. And Pepin the Short was a really charismatic kind of guy. So he ends up becoming powerful with Clovis's kingdom. And Pepin has 2 kids, Charlemagne and I forget the brother's name. But the brother, so they're supposed to divide things equally, but the brother ends up being kind of a dud. He's just kind of crappy. And what's interesting about the brother is there was this whole argument on who should be the heir, who's going to be the next heir to Pepin. And the brother dies of a really bad nosebleed. This is old times. If you have a bad nosebleed and you can't stop it, he literally had a nosebleed that kills him. So that's how Charlemagne becomes the king of this Carolingian Empire. His dad was a really important, charismatic guy. He becomes the king through unifying parts of this Frankish kingdom, which I'll go back. And his brother dies of a nosebleed. So Charlemagne finds himself in charge of rebuilding this broken plate of the Frankish kingdom. Under Charlemagne, society flourishes again. Society becomes less dark and tribal. It starts to be fixed. And our empire of Charlemagne lasts from 768 to 814. And his name is really Charles the First. Get it? Charles, Charlemagne. And Charlemagne creates this Holy Roman Empire. Now, the interesting thing about Charlemagne here is he is similar to Clovis. He is going to be a Christian king, but he has an interesting relationship with Pope Leo II. Pope Leo II is in this area of Rome, surrounded by the Lombards, and he is not safe. People want to come and kill him. And so Charlemagne brings a huge army and goes to just clap these people. So Charlemagne goes from, let me bring up the map here. Charlemagne goes from this area in the Frankish kingdom, and he goes into Lombard, to Rome, to come help Leo. And this is actually a pretty good map. You can see that the conquests of Charlemagne include this Lombard region. Leo is saved, thanks to Charlemagne. And on Christmas Day, Leo blesses Charlemagne and crowns him the Emperor of the Romans. This is important for a lot of reasons. First, how can you say the Emperor of the Romans when the Roman Empire is over here? You could imagine if the Emperor of the Romans is in the Frankish kingdom, how the Byzantine emperors might feel. Next, Charlemagne becomes a Christian ruler of a Christian empire. This is a lot different from just 700 years ago when we have Nero burning Christians alive, or Constantine having to be Christian on the DL. So we have a new Roman emperor, supposedly, a Christian ruler, and what I really love about this story is the idea of Pope Leo III crowning Charlemagne. Now I ask you guys, who has the power in that situation? If a pope crowns a king, then it's the pope that has the power. Like I'm saying, this is a really, really big change from the martyrdom of the Christians. The last thing that I want to talk about today is the monastery. So Rome, the Roman Empire has been broken, and it is just a shattered remains of what it was. There's violence, there's a lack of leadership, the economy is trashed, and there is a man, Benedict, who wants to escape it all. He's a Christian, he wants to get away. He hates Rome, he hates what all it's become. So he goes to the wilderness. And he lives on hardly anything. He hardly eats, he doesn't hardly drink anything. He just prays and gets all of what he needs from God. And he wasn't the only one. There was the establishment of monasteries before him. A monastery was a place where monks lived and did their work. And so Benedict found a monastery and decided to make it his home. But the other people, they were almost kind of creeped out by him. They really didn't like him. And so they filled his wine glass and they put poison in it. And before he drank it, the glass shattered. And Benedict saw them for what they were, and he decides to leave again for the wilderness, once again surviving on hardly anything. Some people not only are upset with the Roman Empire being all broken and horrible, but they're upset with how monasteries are. So Benedict starts to get a following, and he ends up writing down this set of rules, the principles of being a Benedictine monk. And it's a rule about the lifestyle of how you had to live to be closer to God. and I have these out of order. Before we talk about the lifestyle, I do want to just write one more thing about the holy texts. The monks at monasteries are why we have the history that we have today. This is why I say that all of our history from the West can be seen as inherently racist and inherently Christian, because a lot of what survived was written down by Christian people. Luckily, in the 21st century, we have access to enough history that we can put all of what, let's say we want to know about what the year was like in 480. We can take all that what we know about 480 and see what's the same, and that information we can trust. It's called corroboration. It's part of being a historian, is find things that corroborate. And most of what we had was written down by these monks. And they're not just any monks, all right? Let's get to the lifestyle. I have this in a document in our lecture folder. I'm not going to read all of them, but I want to show you guys some highlights. These were the rules that Benedict had written down. Here are some of the notable ones from St. Benedict's The Rule. Some of them are kind of normal, like don't steal, don't kill, bury dead people, help poor people. Some of them are a little bit interesting, though. You shouldn't be proud. You shouldn't be sluggish, so you shouldn't waste any time. You shouldn't like to talk, and you also shouldn't like to laugh very much either. What do you guys think this tells us about monks during the Dark Ages? Was it a pleasant life? Was it a life filled with joy? Or was it a purposely hard life? And what does this tell us about what it means to be a Christian? According to Benedict, to be a Christian is to not like to talk a lot, not like to laugh a lot. Don't be proud of yourself. This ties into our idea of martyrdom. Just like from when the Roman Empire was ruled by people like Nero. I'm gonna leave that at that. Also, just a reminder, why I keep bringing us back to this idea about art is that our final paper is going to be to choose a piece of art. Art can be writing, it can be a painting, it can be a song, from what we learned about. So you couldn't, for example, you couldn't choose a painting of Napoleon. That's not what we learned about. And it's, again, to ask ourselves, what does this say about the society that produced it? That's why I keep saying that. The last thing that I want to go over again is our map that will be on the quiz. We talked about Greece, Rome, Christianity and Jesus, Islam and Muhammad, and today we talked about the kingdom of the Franks. So the Franks have Clovis, Charlemagne, Rome has the Lombards, but we just know Rome because we talked about the Roman Empire for how long. So we're going to end here for today and pick back up with England, the Vikings, and the Battle of Hastings next.